Hey, what is up guys, this is Norman3000. Today we take a look at the Sony HT-ST7, which will be shortened to ST7 for this review. This is a 7.1 soundbar all the way back from 2013. Yes, this is that old. Right off the bat, here's my conclusion. Despite being 12 years old, this soundbar still packs quite a punch. It has great sound, great bass, noticeable separation, and tons of customization options to cater to your preference. This is simply the best soundbar I have ever had. I was able to snag this one on Buy auction for about 3,000 pesos or $60. And at that price, there is literally nothing that can beat this. Not in the brand new space, nor in the second-hand market. I do have to say that the bulky soundbar and the bulky subwoofer are against everything I have been spewing over the last soundbar reviews, especially for those living in a condo or apartment. And that's it for my conclusion. If you want to learn more, stick around. First up is the disclaimer. I first got into soundbars back in 2017, and since then, I have at some point in time dailied the following soundbars: Sony HT-ST7, TCL Raydance, Titanium TSAB 90 watts, TCL S45H, the Sony HT-S100F, and the Sony HT-X8500, the latter two having their own reviews on this channel. So let's do a quick tour. As mentioned earlier, the subwoofer is very bulky and heavy, and it weighs at about 11 kilograms. For the soundbar itself, as you can see here, this is on the larger side, coming in at the length of 408 centimeters and height and depth of about 10 centimeters. This is so big that it kicked the Nintendo Switch 2 out of the table. With the X8500, the Switch 2 sits here, and with the ST7, the Switch 2 was moved elsewhere. At the front, you have 9 drivers here, so 2, 5 there, and 2 more there. You also have a screen here, which is honestly a godsend after years of having no visual indicators from my Sony soundbars. You have the option to either use this bare like this one or the one with a grill. Either option works, but personally, I find the no grill look more appealing. It looks more retro and it has more personality. So pictured here at the back, you have holes where you can wall mount the soundbar. This is simply not advisable given the weight of this bar. You have a section here where you put transceiver. This is to pair with the subwoofer. I actually really like this, as unlike the TCL Raydance, the subwoofer always connects when the bar is turned on. For the TCL Raydance, it seems that I always need to activate the sub if the bar is turned on. I always need to press this vertical surround button twice to have the TCL Raydance subwoofer on. And lastly, at the back, you have this section here which has the ports. You have the classic white and red RCA cable connectors, 2 optical outs, 1 coax, 1 HDMI ARC out, and 3 HDMI inputs. Yes, you heard it right. 3 HDMI inputs from a 12-year-old soundbar. You have to understand that as of late 2021, cheap TV brands in the Philippines like Kuka or Hisense have yet to adapt ARC. I have 2 Kuka TVs from 2020 and 2021 and a Hisense from 2018. All of them does not have ARC. So seeing this from a soundbar in 2013 was a huge shock. I had been so used to optical, and I myself knew of the ARC connection only back in 2013. So let's talk about durability here. You can skip to the next timestamp as this is a personal story, but this is an interesting tidbit with regards to the durability of the ST7. So the Sony HT-ST7 came from Japan. Japan uses 100 volts for their AC, and the Philippines uses 220 volts. I have bought a couple of electronics from Japan within the last month. First is the Kobo Libra 2 here, and the Sony X8500. Both have their own reviews on the channel. Both have worked normally when plugged into the 220 volts. Granted, the Kobo Libra 2 used a USB Type-C cable, and the Sony HT-X8500 came with its own power brick. This made me very complacent, and I made the mistake of plugging the Sony ST7 into a 220 volt socket. And almost immediately, smoke came out, as you can see in the picture here. I literally thought that this soundbar was, well, toast. I unplugged it, took it to a nearby electronic centers, but after plugging it into a 110-volt transformer, it worked. According to the technician, the only thing that got busted was the power supply. I don't know how it still worked after all that smoke, but holy, good work, Sony. I have always been a Sony fanboy, PlayStation over Xbox, PlayStation plus Nintendo has always been my preference. The ST7 just may be more of a Sony glazer. Now we get into the sound test. I know, there is no point in doing a sound test on YouTube, but I have done it on my previous reviews, so I'm doing it here again. For the parameters of this test, I have a mic here at the same distance as my camera. I am about 1 meter away from the soundbar, and there are 50 steps of volumes for the ST7. The Sony HT-ST7 can get very loud, so I will be playing it at the mark shown on the screen. This is to avoid disrupting neighboring condo unit owners. For sound quality, the bass is simply on another level for this one. This is probably due to the fact that there is an external subwoofer here. The bass adds depth and rumble to your multimedia experience, and it really gives you a more immersive feel, whether it be gaming, music, or watching series or movies. You can also adjust the bass level to your preference. The drivers sometimes feel too effective. For example, for Roy Woods' Juliet and Romeo, the listening volume can be inconsistent due to the song itself seemingly utilizing a special kind of audio mixing. The vocals of Juliet and Romeo tend to come from different channels as the song progresses. This special kind of audio mixing is very common across EDMs, and the effectiveness of separation between the drivers is definitely a very good thing. This is more of my ear being used to simplistic stereo setups that I don't get these kinds of depth on my music. If you live in the Philippines, what's apparently good here is more bass, more gooder. With regards to dialogue, at first, I did not like the initial config, as vocals from either TV programs or music seemed to be drowned out. Thankfully, changing the voice mode helped with this issue. There are 3 levels of voice here and it doesn't seem to compromise other aspects of the sound. You can adjust your settings via the remote here, you have the basic setup here, and you can transform it like this for more granular controls. There are a lot of options for configuration here, and I am sure you can find what suits you the most. Personally, I found my all-in-one sweet spot to be sound mode at surround, voice level at 3, and bass level at 2. Sometimes, bass level at 3 is better for EDMs. I do have to point out 2 flaws with this old system. You don't get a lot of newer sound technologies like Dolby Atmos, and you don't get more granular controls for EQ. But considering the age and the fact that I found a config I feel happy with, the lack of the aforementioned is something I can live with. Overall, for sound quality, among all the soundbars I have used, this one has the best bass, the best separation, this has the best option for vocal clarity, and this is simply the most versatile soundbar I have ever had. Before we wrap up, let's do a quick pros and cons first. For the pros, it can get very loud, it has great build, it remembers your settings, there is no audio skips like cheaper soundbars, there is an HDMI ARC which is always great and convenient for one remote setups, there is a punchy bass here, there's a boatload of settings to tinker to your heart's content, and above all, this is very cheap. For the cons, this is very bulky. Both the subwoofer and the soundbar are huge. The ST7 also lacks modern audio features, it lacks granular EQ controls, the initial config might not be the best, and this is extremely rare, especially for $60. Back in 2013, the Sony HT-ST7 was priced at about $1,399 or about 65,000 pesos, which, if looked at through the lens of a third world consumer, falls right into the high-end setup. This has long been discontinued, so there's no point in discussing if it was worth $1,400 back then. However, what I can say is that for $60 or about 3,000 pesos, there is nothing, and I mean nothing, in the market that can match the performance of the Sony HT-ST7, period. Let's look at the options for $60 soundbars. Titanium audio, which has audio skips, pass. The TCL S45H, which I consider to be the best upgrade your TV speaker choice. It costs more than this one at $3,500. Even if we go to $100 and go into the second-hand market, there is still nothing there that can match the ST7's value. Well, on the second-hand market, this is more due to the fact that Filipinos tend to overprice their second-hand products. You might be inclined to do a counter-argument. Well, this is still a soundbar, it's nothing against an actual home theater. And yes, I 100% agree. But I ask you this, can you buy a home theater setup for $60 that include an ARC connection? I am always ready to receive feedback about how wrong I am, and I hope this reaches a bigger audience so I can get suggestions on a $60 home theater setup that can beat the Sony HT-ST7. Did I get lucky snagging this at about $60? No doubt. So, dear viewer, you are probably thinking, what was the point of this review since I can't readily buy this? Well, what I want to convey is, this is simply a case of another man's trash is another man's treasure. Before you check out that brand new item, try to find better deals. Don't rely on Amazon, Shopee, or Lazada's top picks. Do your own research, find better deals, get the most out of your money. Buy is an amazing place for second-hand, cheaper quality products. At 12 years old, this has all the features I want, it sounds better than anything else that I've ever owned, and it undercuts them all in price. The Sony HT-ST7 is simply the best $60 soundbar out there. How about you? What soundbar are you using? How much did you spend on your home setup? Let me know your thoughts if you had an older setup or if you have the Sony HT-ST7 itself. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Consider like, sharing, and subscribing if you found this useful. This has been Norman 3000. See you soon, and happy listening!